Hi everyone, welcome to Things Lucy Reads. I'm Luce and this is a wrap-up video. Okay, so apparently we are still having the same conversations we were having 2 fucking years ago when I made my Code of Silence video about whether or not you should announce whether a book has queer characters or a queer romance. And of course, all of the Allocishet people say no because they see themselves represented in every single book in the universe. And all of the queer people say yes because we don't. And we need to know where we're represented. And if people don't tell us, then we don't know. I can't believe that this is still happening, that we are still having to say over and over again, please tell us when we are in a book, we would like to know. I'm not going to name names because the person who originally did not disclose that a book was queer after being told that they should said, I will do this in the future, which is really all I ask. If you're not doing it and you're told that you should, please start. That's all that we're trying to say. Anyway, I decided that because of this, and since I was one of the people who started the conversation 2 years ago, I should probably come back and it's time to add my voice to the mix because I am actually gay, unlike a lot of people out here on BookTube, and so I have some kind of authority when talking about gay books. And I think that it's important for as many queer voices to be added to the mix as possible so that maybe we will be heard over the Allocishet allies. One more thing, if you are an ally and you're watching this and you think, well, I don't really want to announce when a book is queer because what if there are queerphobic people in my followers and they get upset and unfollow me when I talk about this book, or maybe if I don't admit this book is queer, they will read it and thus have their minds changed. I can tell you right now that is bullshit. If someone is that bigoted, they're not going to change their minds. And if you are really an ally, you should put the feelings of your queer followers over those of your non-queer followers, especially when it comes to queer books. And if those people are going to be upset at you mentioning a queer book and they're going to unfollow you, then you should not want them in your followers anyway, because if you were a real ally, you would not want to associate with homophobic people unless they were your immediate family and you couldn't get away from them. I am tired of people putting delicate snowflake bigots over people who are marginalized. It needs to stop, and you need to stop perpetuating the idea that we should do that. Especially with the political climate of the world the way it is, you need to stand up for the people that aren't being heard, and you need to help them be heard. It doesn't mean talking over them, it means boosting them, okay? Okay, now that we've got that over with, I'm going to talk about all of the queer books that I've read so far this year. The ones in this video will be all the ones that I read in a physical copy or now own in a physical copy. So, the first 2 books that I'm going to talk about are the first 2 in a trilogy. They are Aftermath and Aftermath Life Debt by Chuck Wendig. This is a new canon Star Wars trilogy. It was part of the Journey to the Force Awakens literary event. One of the characters in this, named Sinjir Rathvelas, is gay. And in Life Debt, he gets a boyfriend, and then there's also little interludes between chapters, and one of them in Life Debt is about a genderqueer pirate, which was really cool. And I'm really glad that I decided to pick this up because I didn't expect to see myself reflected in a book about Star Wars, and then I did, and it was just a really wonderful feeling. The writing style is a little bit hard for some people to handle. Chuck writes in third-person omniscient present tense, and occasionally he doesn't write in complete sentences, but it's also the exact same writing style that Emily St. John Mandel uses in Station 11. So if you could handle the writing style in this, you will be able to handle Aftermath. And honestly, I think most of the people that complain to him about his writing style are really just upset that he has a gay character in here. Because that's how it is. They can't admit that they hated it because there's a gay character. They have to find some legitimate reason. Anyway, so there is a minor character in The Force Awakens called Snap Wexley. This follows him as a 15-year-old, his mother Nora, who was a rebellion pilot. There's also Sinjir, as I said, who was an ex-Imperial officer. There's a bounty hunter named Jaz Amari, and another guy whose name I forget, who was also part of the rebellion. And honestly, it's just a really fun romp through space about the last days of the Empire, following the destruction of the second Death Star and the deaths of the Emperor and Darth Vader. Leia is also a pretty big side character in this, and they're just really interesting and they're really fun, and I really care about all of the characters. I was really excited for Empire's End to be released, and I still haven't finished reading it, even though it came out in February. But maybe one day soon I'll finish. Anyway, definitely recommend reading these. Even if you haven't really read any Star Wars novels before, but you've seen the movies, it will be really easy to jump into these. I had only read one other Star Wars book when I was in primary school before picking these up, and now I have read nearly all of the new canon. So, yeah, definitely recommend these. The next book that I'm going to talk about is the first volume of, I would have called it a manga, except it reads right to left and the author is Korean. So, Korean manga, I guess. Anyway, it is Boy Princess Volume 1 by Seong Kim. This is about a young prince whose sister was supposed to marry this other prince, but she runs away and elopes, and so his family dress him up as a girl and send him to the other kingdom so he can marry the prince. Anyway, he's found out by the end of this novel, but the other prince doesn't really mind. And it's just about this developing relationship that has kind of been thrust on both of them. I have been meaning to read this ever since I was in high school, but I never really had a chance to acquire a copy. And honestly, I expected it to be terrible in the way that a lot of boys love manga is terrible, with consent issues and like really unhealthy abusive relationships, but I actually didn't find it to be that way. I was pleasantly surprised by how everything was handled, and I'm actually really excited to pick up the rest of the volumes in this series, and I think there's about 9. Anyway, I gave this 3.5 out of 5 stars, not because there was anything specifically bad about it, but mostly just because it was the introduction of a series, so we didn't really get to know anyone very well because they were just being introduced, and there is quite a few volumes, so I expect that will be fixed in later ones. And then the next book that I read, I was actually sent a review e-copy by the author, and then after it had been released, he sent me a physical copy. And the book is Prince Harry, Boy to Man by William Kuhn, which is a kind of companion novel to Mrs. Queen Takes the Train, which I read a couple of years ago and absolutely loved. So yeah, I was pretty excited to read it. I ended up really enjoying it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, I think. It's about Prince Harry's deployment to Afghanistan and how he kind of reconciles being a Prince of England with also having to be an officer who is subordinate to other people who don't really have a very good opinion of him because they think he's just this spoiled prince brat. And like Mrs. Queen Takes the Train, there are many different point of views. One is Harry, obviously. The other is his friend Mustafa, who is an Afghan Englishman, and he's also gay. That was cool. There's also this officer who is pulled out of retirement to kind of supervise Harry, and then there's this other woman who, through her church, goes on this deployment to Afghanistan to provide spiritual succor, I guess, to the soldiers, and she also used to be Harry and William's nanny when they were little, but then she was fired because of alcoholism. And so she knows Harry, and she also knows this officer who's been sent to supervise him because that officer's parents moved in the same circle as this woman and her husband when she was married. So everyone was connected in the same kind of way that people in Mrs. Queen were connected. And even though it was set during the war in Afghanistan and actually in Afghanistan, I didn't feel like it was biased at all. Like, it didn't paint the Afghan people as being all evil or anything like that. It was very grey, and they were all just people that were caught up in this war that was happening and that they really had no control over. I really enjoyed it. The next one I'm going to talk about is Welcome to Orphan Corp by Marley Jane Ward, which is an OzYA novella. The main character, Miri, is bisexual, and this novella is very sex positive. Miri is bisexual, so she had love scenes with both girls and boys. It's set in a dystopian future in Australia where there are these, like, corps, and if you're an orphan, you're sent to an orphan corp. And then when you age out, you're kind of sent to another corp that provides employment, kind of thing. And this was just about Miri transferring to this one orphan corp, and all of the people that she meets there, and specifically one called Vu, who she kind of develops a relationship with, but then they get separated. And then the second one, which is called Synode, kind of is about Miri and Vu finding each other again, but I haven't read this one yet. I'm pretty sure I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. It was really enjoyable. It was really nice to read something that was dystopian but also Australian. And there was this other character who was genderqueer, and there was just a lot of diversity in general, and it was really great. The next book that I'm going to talk about is another manga volume, and it is Love for Venus by Yuki Nakagi. This is also called Venus in Love. Now, this volume itself is not specifically queer, but the entire storyline is. There's this girl, Suzuna, who has just started university, and she meets her next door neighbor called Aichi, and he's also in her class, and he has this really gorgeous best friend called Fukami, who Suzuna kind of gets a little bit of a crush on, but Aichi also has a thing for him, so they have to compete for Fukami's love. I haven't read the rest of the series even though I own it, but I'm hoping to very soon because this was just really, really fun and I can't wait to see where it goes. The next book I'm going to talk about is another Australian one. It's The Loud Earth by Elizabeth Murray. This is about a woman who lives in a mountain cabin in this touristy lakeside town, and she lives alone, and one day she meets this young woman who just kind of comes to her door to escape some men that are following her, and they fall into this relationship which is not entirely healthy, if I'm honest. The woman that lives alone was accused of murdering her parents, but she was acquitted, but the people in the town still believe that she did it, so she's kind of been ostracized from everyone because they believe that she's evil. And then like she meets Hannah, and as I said, they fall into this relationship and they have to grapple with the fact that Hannah is constantly hearing these rumors from the townspeople and being warned about them, and we never really know whether or not the woman actually did it. Even though it was very bleak in a way, the writing was very beautiful and it felt comforting to read. Like, I really enjoyed the process of reading it because, yeah, it was strangely comfortable. I don't know how else to explain it. I think I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. And then the last book that I'm going to talk about was a recent acquisition. It was a birthday present from the lovely Louisina, and it is Princess Ever After by Katie O'Neill. I'm not actually sure whether this one is own voices or not. I think it might be, but I can't say like absolutely for sure. This is about this princess called Amira who doesn't really want to be married off to a prince. She wants to, you know, make her own destiny. So she rides up to this castle and she rescues the princess that's trapped inside, and she's called Sadie. And Sadie is fat, which is fantastic. So Amira and Sadie go off on this journey together, and they join forces with this other prince who was trying to defeat an ogre and failed. And then they have to go back to Sadie's kingdom to kind of settle a dispute there. And it was just really, really, really lovely. It was very short and probably could have done with being a little bit longer so we could spend a little bit more time with the characters and get to know them better. But all in all, it was just really fantastic. I cried so much at the ending because, not to spoil it, but it was wonderful and it was what I was hoping would happen, but then didn't expect it to, and then it did, and it was fantastic. And between this and that short film In a Heartbeat, my little gay heart is just so happy. So that's it for this video. As always, if you've read any of these, feel free to leave a comment and let me know what you thought. And I will see you in my next video. Bye everyone.